Good morning. We are busy with economic lesson from the NSSC ordinary syllabus of Namibia, and we are still at 2.1, which is about business types, and we still are busy with the private sector. You can go to the slide in the previous lessons and see all the business types in the private sector. We are doing the private limited companies today and the public limited companies. Okay, we look first to the features of a private limited company. They say that the shareholders is the owners. So from now on, if you talk about the owners, you use the word shareholders. That is important. Capital is divided into shares. So if they need capital for the business to expand or to start up, they issue shares to get the capital. And then me and you will buy that shares. That is how they get their capital together. And the only evidence we will have, if we give them capital, they will give us a share certificate that say you own share number 50 to 150 with your name on it. If you sell it, you will hand over the certificate to somebody else, which is then in possession of that shares. Profits are divided into dividends between the shareholders according to the number of shares and the type of shares they have. We will talk later on about the type of shares. Then another feature is there can be one person in a private company, but the maximum is 50 shareholders. You can't sell your shares on the stock exchange if you are part of a private company. That is important. And for you to know if you want to sell your shares, so say for example, I want to sell my shares of this private company to somebody else, then the rest of the shareholders must first give me permission. So this shares is normally sold to family and friends. That's why they call it a private company. And they decide who they want to allow into this business. So you can't sell it to anyone of the general public. So that is very important for you to realize that you must get permission from the rest of the shareholders of a private company. It's also very important benefit that a private company is a legal person on its own. You remember then they are responsible for their own debts. The next point is that you will always see in the name Pty Ltd behind their name. And that identifies for you that you are working with a private company. And the rest is that the shareholders get the benefit of limited liabilities. They are not responsible for the debts of the company. And that encourages more people to invest and buy shares in a private company because they don't have to cover the debts, and that is a benefit for them. It's difficult and it's very expensive to set up companies, not only private companies, but also public companies, because there's lots of laws and requirements which you must adhere to. Shareholders are will normally elect a board of directors to manage private companies. You must remember, if it is a very big private company, then they will elect any person. The person don't even have to be a shareholder. And then another, if it is small and you are just 5 family members, an uncle and a brother and a father and so together, then you can also be the board of directors and act as the board of directors. That means that the ownership and the control are normally in different hands. Sometimes where it is small, is in the same hands. That means the owners can also manage the private company. Over here, you can again do group work and again identify advantages of private companies and disadvantages. You have now learned in the previous lessons how to do this, because this will benefit you if you come in an exam and they ask you advantages or disadvantages, or what is good about moving to this type of business form. Okay, and look for businesses in your community or in your country which have the words Pty Ltd behind it, and you will know that you are working, or this is an example of a private limited company. Somebody that, or some business that most of you know is Pupkewitz. They are part of a private limited company. They are in the hands of the most shareholders is family. So that is a good example for you. Okay, then we have the advantages of a private limited company. The continuity. If one shareholder dies, the business continue. They can raise more capital. You remember it's 1 to 50 than in the case of close corporations or partnerships or obviously sole traders. And the profits is taxed, but dividends that you receive as a part of the share are as a part of the profits that are not taxed at the moment. They are talking about that, the government, but not yet. You are not required as a private company to publish your financial statements. And then lastly, the shareholders benefit from limited liability, that they don't have to cover the debts of the business, and that encourage investment. So these are all the 5 that I could get together of advantages. Then we look at the disadvantages. There are 3. It's more complicated and time-consuming and expensive than a CC to set up. The managers by directors. If it is small, it is managed by the shareholders. So there can be sometimes a problem that the directors don't really understand what the aims is of the shareholders and what they want to achieve for their business if they are not the same person, the owners and the management. So that can cause disruption or disagreements. And then the disadvantage is they can't collect as many capital as public companies. We will see if we continue with public companies. So that is what I have for you at the moment on private companies. We will now look to public companies. You can also get a question, you will later on see between the difference of when is it a private company and when it is a public company. So we look at the features. Public limited companies can start with a minimum of 7 shareholders. The maximum is unlimited, it can be any amount. And then shareholders will have limited liability. They are not responsible for the debts of the public company. It's very important that you understand the legal person and understand the effect of this. It can be asked in a definition for you. And then shares are freely transferable in the case of a public company. In a case of a public company, they register at the stock exchange. Or any stock exchange, it don't have to be only the Namibian stock exchange. And if they are registered on a stock exchange, the shares of that company can be sold to any person or business that is part or that is interested in that shares. So there's no permission allowed by anyone to buy a share or sell a share. So it is available for the general public, which include individuals and firms. Ownership and control is in different hands because the owners appoint the managers, which is the board of directors. and the continuity in this business, because it's an entity on its own. It doesn't matter if one person died, the shares will be transferred to somebody else that inherit it. The name of this business will only have LTD behind it. It means limited liability. So if you see LTD behind the name, then you know this is a public limited company. They must, according to law, publish their financial statement. Private companies and public companies must must have audited financial statements according to law. But in the case of a public company, they must also publish it. They nowadays publish it online, but most of them still publish it in a newspaper. It's normally over 2 pages, like say Bankfund, for example. That's a clear example that you can look at. Banks do that because the banks, big banks in our country, are all public limited companies. Okay, the capital is divided in shares, which they sell to the general public on the stock exchange, and the owners are also called shareholders, and their profits is also divided into dividends according to the number and type of shares, and they cannot issue a share in their own name. It is the business, the company is a legal person. The legal person issues the shares that you want to. If he needs more capital, they sit together and they decide. They issue a prospectus, that is a magazine in which they inform the new shareholders or interested people that they want to sell more shares, and that is, they give reasons what they want to do with it. So when Namibian breweries have registered themselves on the stock exchange and they issued more shares, they have clearly explained why they want to do it. They want to expand to Zambia, Angola, Botswana, South Africa, Germany, and they need more capital for that. So that will be clear with previous years on financial statements, clearly explained to you in a prospectus. A prospectus invites you to buy shares. But remember, we are very busy with a public limited company, so we work through the stock exchange. Buying and selling of this company shares can only take place on the stock exchange. Okay, they provide many jobs because they are normally very big businesses with high output. Okay, now there are more features. They have lots of valuable assets. So if I tell you that, then you will know that they have lots of assets to offer for loans as security at the bank. So if they apply for a loan, they can really get a very big loan because the amount of assets they can offer as security is a lot. So the bank will easily give them money because of their lots of valuable assets that is on the PowerPoint. Their output is normally very high, as I've mentioned. So because of that, they can achieve economies of scale. You don't really know what economies of scale is, but later on we will explain economies of scale. It is just to bring down the average cost if the output increase. But we will explain exactly what it is in another lesson. They are usually large firms, and as I said, because of that, they usually employ a lot of workers. They sell 2 types of shares, which is called ordinary and preference shares. They also sell debentures, and the money that they get in except shares that they sell, they also get money through debentures, issuing debentures, or by taking out loans. So that's where the money for a public company comes from. Okay, the registration process for a public company is very time-consuming, very expensive, and so we will look at that. You must register at the Register of Companies. You must complete a certificate of incorporation. This certificate have your name, your address, and on it, and the objectives of this company. Then you must also complete an article of association, the duties of the shareholders, the directors, and when they call meetings and so forth. And once this was accepted by the Register of Companies, you must also hand yearly a copy of your financial statements, not only to the receiver of revenue or the Inland Revenue Office, you must also hand it to the Register of Companies. And as I've already have mentioned, if you want to start to sell shares on a stock exchange, you must issue a prospectus in where you invite the public to buy your shares and why you want to do that. You can do the same here in group work, look for advantages of a public limited company and disadvantages. There is both cases a lot that you can identify. Just work through the features. The examples that you can look for in your town is easy for you. You can use any of the banks, as I have said, because all of them are listed on the Namibian Stock Exchange. You can also go to the newspaper daily. The Republican have a result on the share prices of the Namibian Stock Exchange, and then you can see which companies, like Trustco, Namibia Breweries, are listed on the stock exchange. Okay, and then we look at advantages of public limited companies and see if you have the same or some of the same. The shareholders have limited liability. It's an advantage, you know why? Because they are not responsible for the debts. You can issue and transfer your shares easily on the stock exchange. If you have shares and you need money, you just call your stockbroker. Remember, you can't buy and sell on your own behalf through the stock exchange. You must work through a stockbroker. Stockbrokers are people that are registered on the stock exchange. Only they may buy and sell shares on the stock exchange. So you contact your stockbroker and you give him an instruction to sell your shares at a specific price. So then he can sell it to anyone. There is no permission needed, and you will get your cash. So that is important for you to know it. So that can happen very quickly. Then, because they sometimes produce on large scale, as I said, or mostly produce in large scale, they have the benefit of economies of scale, which their average cost can decrease the more they produce. Okay, the last point of the advantages of public limited companies is that they can get more capital together, because obviously, as you have seen, there's no limit to the amount of shareholders that can buy shares in this company. Then the disadvantages, there are many formalities, expensive and time consuming. There's a separation between the owners and the management, which can cause problems because they may not run it in the way you want it to be run as an owner. And then they must publish their financial statements, and anyone can see their competitors also. And not only a disadvantage that the financial statement is very expensive because it must be done by a chartered accountant. And then it's possible for outsiders actually to take over your firm by just buying as many shares as they can. And you remember, if you have more than 50% of the shares, you can have more votes than the rest, so then you can take control over decisions in a company. It's very important for a teacher to realize that this work that we are busy with can be very boring for the students. So they must implement games in between where the students learn these features, look for advantages, disadvantages. that it become interesting. I normally set up quiz and then say tomorrow we have a quiz and the one that win this will get a lolly or some sweet or something like that, that they are encouraged to study. They come with the questions themselves. Each one bring me a question and we ask the questions then on 2 topics or 3 topics or 4 topics. Just something to make this more interesting for the students. Okay, I have a homework, explain what is a dividend and how it is divided for 3 marks, and then I have look at the advantages for a private limited company and a public limited company, and discuss the disadvantages of a public limited company. Okay, and then I have exam and test questions which you can use as a teacher. Why can public limited companies sell their shares on the stock exchange? You can look at the reasons for that. Why can't private limited companies or closed corporations do it? Discuss the difference between a preference and an ordinary share. There you must use your textbook and get as many information as possible together. And then on point C, that I have here, what is the benefits that a public limited company like, say, Bank Vintu will bring to a country like Namibia? Why is it good that there are public limited companies? You can look for 5 good benefits that it will bring to our country. And then choose the best business type for 4 lawyers if they want to start up a business. So think of reasons. What will be the best business type? So you don't just suggest, you must give reasons. No? Okay, that's all for today. Please remember to make it interesting for the students.